Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
We've had a very eventful pre-game, I'd say.
Absolutely.
We'll talk about it later.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Very, very eventful. Well, it's some good stories coming out.
Yes.
But welcome, everyone. Welcome to episode 66. I'm joined with former Air Force National Guard.
Air National Guard.
I always mess that one up on purpose, by the way. It's Air Force. It's the same thing. We're going to call it Air Force. Staff Sergeant Mel Bjorgen.
Yes. Everybody calls me Mel, so please feel free to call me Mel.
That was the official title.
You're right.
Everything else will be Mel. So I figured that was it because you sent that in the bio. I figured that was the way I was going to go with it. So we're going to start off with a quote. And I always love, we'll be able to talk about this later, but I always love being able to quote my guests. So we're going to quote you from one of your articles. I was stalking you a little bit.
Oh, wow.
So we're going to quote you from one of your things you've recently written is there's too much pressure on young mothers to make every moment count, bottle up each memory, and enjoy them being little. It's going to be a mixed bag. Sometimes you will do those things. Other times the days will blur. Be grateful every day for being a mom and cherish the gift of it. But you do not have to enjoy every moment. You're human, for crying out loud. Stop feeling guilty all the time.
Yes.
And that is from Mel.
Yes.
Also known as Melissa. So, but it's, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later on in the podcast. So you can talk about it now?
Yeah, sure. Let's talk about it now.
Okay.
I write on Substack under Literary Christian Meatloaf. Love doing that. I just started that this year back in March. And so I'm coming up to my year anniversary. I used to do a lot on Facebook and what we would call mommy blogging, I suppose. And I just got a distaste for that genre. I don't write a lot about motherhood. So it's kind of surprising that you chose that because I write an eclectic mix of things, but this in particular kind of gets to me because I see moms rushing around all the time, just running themselves ragged. And then what is on Instagram about how to be this mom, this perfect mom, making marshmallow stars homemade and, milling your own flour and stuff like that's not realistic. And then now coming up to the Christmas holiday and it's like, I read a blog once that said, you only have 18 summers with your child. Make every single precious moment count. And that's just not life. Yeah. Life as a mom is hard sometimes. There's lots of joyful memories to be made and times to be had. But life is also life. It's hard. You're in the trenches as a mom, as a parent, as a dad, and you cannot make every moment magical. And if you do, you will run yourself ragged and tired. And that's kind of the spirit of that. Like, stop trying to be perfect. We're not perfect.
Yeah, it's crazy because it's funny. A lot of the listeners were like, we need to have more ladies on. So like, I'm excited that you're ending the year because it is a different point of view because we'll talk more about your military career, but also, all of you are moms. So you balance a lot of things that are going on. And it's funny you bring that up, like Instagram or the social media sites. I remember like the first year my oldest son was born. And I remember watching, it was late night, one of the late night shows, let's say Letterman, but one of them, and Catherine Zeta-Jones was on, and she just had a kid, like the same time my son was born. And she looks like she looked before she had a kid. And she's talking about how hard it is to be a mom. And I'm thinking, yeah, this lady probably has she probably doesn't cook. She doesn't do any of this stuff where she's able to do all these other things. And then like some poor mom, like if my wife sees this, she's going to feel awful about herself that she's not, doing all these things that she's talking about. So it is interesting with social media coming on board and how it is. There's always, yeah, it's crazy. It's, I'm glad mine are older, but you have more than 18 summers because they don't leave. Trust me.
You know what my moment was, feeling like, oh my, I'm not up to standard, was when I watched J-Lo at the Super Bowl that one year. And she comes out and she's like, I don't know how old she is, but she's got to be in her 50s, maybe even older. And she looked like $1 million. And everybody was like, look at this. This is a mom. This is a powerful woman. And as a woman looking at that, yes, we want women to be empowered and look great at any age and stage. But then also I just kind of felt like that is definitely not me, will never be me. I cannot relate to that. And so that's why I want to encourage women that it is okay. There are so many beauty standards out there and momming standards out there and just women's standards out there. And it's okay to be yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So who do you think drives that more, women or men?
Who do
other men or other men or other women that drive that, like, has to be perfect? You have to, like, the elf on the shelf, that you have to have these like drastic, like every day is like the craziest elf on the shelf things, where you got to do every, activity with your kid all the time. Cause I don't know who started that is the way you have to be as a parent. Cause I'm not that way. My wife is still kind of that same way. She feels like she always has to, do everything and be part of everything. And I'm like, I'm in a different part with my kids, but like, they left for a little bit, but they're back.
Right.
But they'll eventually leave again. But when your kids leave, whether it's 18 summers or 25 or whatever, you're a woman again, and you're a dad. You're a mom, and you're a man. You're a dad. It's like it's such a crazy standard it's only a small part of you, really, of your life, really, right?
Right. I think that things really amped up when the internet wasn't introduced. I'm an 80s baby, raised in the 80s, and then teenagered in the 90s. And we didn't have that.
Yeah.
And our moms were reading magazines to get Christmas ideas and things like that. And I think once the internet hit, once social media hit, it automatically became an issue, because we're comparing each other. They were doing that anyway. They were trying to keep up with the Joneses anyway. But now you see pictures and videos and short TikToks of perfect moments, while probably the rest of the house is in shambles.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and they make a ton of money, and then they also
Sure.
they make a lot of people not feel great about themselves.
And so it's a mindset.
Thing.
It's a mindset. You have to be, I think, in a way, resolve that I am happy with where I'm at and who I'm at, where I'm at, how I look, who I'm with, and what my momming style is like and what my lifestyle is like, and be secure in that, and not give in to all those comparisons.
We jumped right into it. Holy cow. Yeah. That was like in the bottom. But the article on Substack is Mel Untethered. I'm thankful for the blurry years.
Yes.
So we'll post it on the page to do it. Whether you're a mom or a dad, you should read it. I when I was reading it, I kind of a lot of it does apply to dads, I think, too, if you really look at it. But like, it's an interesting way to see how my wife and other wives feel about, being a mom, and it's eye-opening. It was a great article.
Thank you.
Because
it's hard out there, moms. I'm with you.
It is hard. It never gets easy, right?
No, it doesn't.
I don't know. I feel like it was easier when they were younger somehow.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
When they get a certain age, it's like hardest age for your kids, you think?
Right now.
For you, right?
Right
it's
now.
Like right now.
No, if you look at some of my pictures, you'll notice that I have a child with who's a quadriplegic, and he has spastic quadriplegic cerebral palsy. He's in a wheelchair. And the thing that my husband and I noticed is it was way easier in the younger years to carry him ourselves. And now both my husband and I are using a lift, and we have to think about with him, what does puberty look like? I don't know. What does his future look like as far as high school and things like that? That's been really tough. I have another daughter who was diagnosed with autism, and that's been really an interesting space to be in. She was a late diagnosis into her teen years, and it's been really difficult to navigate that with her. All of these years, she's been just herself without this diagnosis, but it came to a point where she wasn't functioning well in school. And so we had to get her some help. But she's got to learn how to navigate in a world that doesn't always work for her. And then I have another daughter, my older daughter. She struggles with her mental health, and she's been doing a lot better. But as they age, their issues become more complex.
Yeah.
But let me tell you, when they were all toddlers, because they were all toddlers together, I don't think I ever slept. That was hard.
Yeah. The sleeping. Yeah. I try not to give anybody any type of like parenting advice because I always didn't do it great. But the one thing I always try to throw into people is like when they have their first kid, it's like,
yeah,
dude, whenever you can get sleep. It's like, if you feel like the baby's asleep, I just want to hang out and watch a movie for 2 hours. I'm like, don't just sleep. It's like, it goes back to your article, just sleep. Who cares if laundry's not done? Just sleep, because whatever you think is going to happen is not going to happen, because all of a sudden you're like, oh, they've slept straight for like 10 straight days. And that night they're like up all night. It's just like, oh goodness. Yeah,
I know. I have a very distinct memory with my first child, my firstborn, who never wanted to sleep at night. And I was so tired, I started to cry, and I put the baby on our bed, and my husband roused, and he was like, what's going on? What's the matter? And I leaned over on the bed and I pounded my fists on the bed and I said, I just want to sleep. And he was like, I guess it's my turn to take the baby now.
You're like, me too. You're keeping me awake, Mel. Go back to sleep. Can you take the baby into the other room?
Right. He was great.
No, but yeah, but that's she has some great articles. We didn't think we were going to be that quick, but check out Substack.
Okay.
You have some great articles out there. What's your writer name on that again?
Literary Christian Meatloaf. And the reason why it's called Literary Christian Meatloaf is because I've discovered a love for literature, for classic literature, and I write about that and other books. And then I'm a Christian, so I write everything that I write is from pretty much a Christian perspective. Even if I write about The Office or Schitt's Creek, it's kind of with that twist. And so it's a bunch of things lumped together like a meatloaf, and that's why I called it that.
Yes. You thought that out. I like it. I thought it was like you just kept putting stuff in and there was no more like
no
Christian badass they're all taken. You're like,
there's
what?
A method behind the madness.
I really like meatloaf, so I went with that one. I'm like, okay, you told that story way better. So let's rewind a little bit.
Okay.
We'll start off from the younger years.
Okay.
Born in Puerto Rico.
Yes, Bayamon.
Nice. Nice. Quickly moved to Washington. When did you move to Washington, D.C.?
I moved when I was 3 months old. We moved to that area. So there's two sides, the Virginia side and the Maryland side. I lived on the Maryland side. So grew up all in D.C.? My whole life in DC up until I was 21 and I got married, and then we moved to small town South Carolina.
So any brothers and sisters?
I have 7 brothers and sisters.
Holy cow.
Yes. There's
some of the guests almost spit out the water. Like, whoa, that's the biggest family. You're the member, that's the biggest family that any guest has had, isn't it? No?
Do we have someone with like 9 or 10?
Oh, that's close.
So we didn't all, I will say this, we didn't all live together.
Okay.
So there was my sister, me, and then my younger sister. We were from my mom and my dad. They got divorced. My dad had 3 more and my mom had 2 more. And so we lived with my mom and my stepfather. And so there was 5 kids and one, I don't even think the house was 1,500 square feet in College Park, Maryland, right in the shadow of University of Maryland. And then my mom and my stepfather, my dad and my stepfather, they raised their 3 and we saw them every once in a while.
So what was it like living in tight quarters? 5 kids, small house?
It was tight. That's for sure. I mean, there was 4 girls and just one boy, and he was little. He didn't even have a room. He was living downstairs in the basement in this little nook. I was sharing a room with my sister, and my other sisters shared a room, and we had one bathroom to share for all 4 of us, and that was a challenge.
4 girls in a bathroom. That's
yeah.
I'm glad I never had that experience.
You don't want it. There was no privacy. I'll just say that.
So where do you fall in the number?
I'm second oldest. Okay.
So you still close with all the siblings now?
I am close. I didn't grow up with my dad's kids, and so I keep up with them on Facebook and like their things on Instagram. Um, and so I mean, I love them. They're my brother and sister. We're just not close. And I have good relationships with all of my siblings except one. So that's good. I mean, it's good that, not everything is broken. So
Yeah. So what was life growing up for you? Sports, playing sports, or
so
what was young Mel doing?
Young Mel was basically like what the kids were doing on Stranger Things, riding bikes. Minus all the weird stuff.
Minus the underground
Right.
thing. Yeah,
but we were riding bikes. And everywhere. We were crossing major intersections to go to 7-Eleven because we didn't like the highs on the corner. That was very safe to go to. I don't know if you remember the convenience store highs, but
I don't remember that, no.
but we had to go across the street to 7-Eleven. We rode our bikes all over, farther than I think my mom thought. Played outside with my friends a lot. My sisters and I would play Barbie for hours. And never ever thought I was ever going to be in the Air Force.
I think the bike thing is funny because we all did that. Like there was such freedom to be on the bike. It was like, we did right. You went out and just rode everywhere. Like, I mean, a lot of times the greatest thing is your parents didn't know where you went.
No, they had no idea. They just said, be home by dark.
I never went more than a mile from my house ever on the bike.
No,
that's a lie. My dad didn't know it. So it's like, I'm just trying to, but nobody was tracking you. Like they didn't know what you're doing. The same thing. We'd be riding on major roads. Nobody cared.
It was, I would never, ever, ever let my kids do what I did, but it was a completely different time.
That's interesting.
I'm too scared now.
Yeah.
I've been just indoctrinated into the unsafety of this world, either through what's available on the internet or just my own personal experience.
Yeah, I always balance out when I'm a little bit older than you. So I think you look at this, I feel the same way too, is I say like, oh, we should let them do all these things. But deep down inside, I'm like, no, because I think a lot of it was what you didn't know, because I feel I have it that was happening, and it was still happening before the unsafe things were happening. You just didn't know about it,
right?
But like now, it's like I just read an article about some lady who like let her kid walk to school like a mile and a half or something, and they arrested her for it. Like he was biking on the side of the road, and so there's all these things that people are getting involved. Like they see your kid, all of a sudden you're a bad parent. Like, but there's the safety of it, and then like. Is a part of me that's like, let them just go out and do these things. But I don't know if it's the fear of like, I don't know if it's the fear that they're not going to make good decisions, but it's also like the decisions to make. Like I've done things that if there were cameras around,
right,
and everybody was documenting it, it probably wouldn't have been great. I mean, to have those things on. So there's that part of it. But like for me, yeah, you're right. Like I'm pretty close to Polaris. Like if one of my sons just like took a bike to Wendy's, let's say that's over there now, like I think my wife we would freak out. And you're just like, it's only a mile and a half away. Absolutely. You could be on the sidewalk, but we're like, meanwhile, we were just, like you said, riding everywhere, doing whatever the hell we wanted to do.
Right.
Yeah. But we survived. I mean,
we survived.
Yeah.
We survived. I mean, it was, those were the happy times. And then I had a very difficult childhood as well. And so I'm happy for the memories. I was involved a lot in theater. One of the pictures I shared with you was of me just this past Halloween dressed up like Maleficent from Sleeping Beauty. That's just kind of my heartbeat. So again, something that didn't really fit within the realm of Air Force, because everybody knew me as Theater Mel. And girly girl Mel, Barbie Mel, and it just didn't seem to work, but it did.
So do you want to talk about the bad parts of growing up?
Sure. I can talk some about it.
Yeah.
I'll say this, there was abuse and neglect, and I knew what was happening and what was going on. And yet when you have people that don't really notice, like all the signs are there, but they don't really notice that anything's off. It's really disorienting because you start to think, okay, this is normal. This isn't bad. This is the way life goes. But then you also know it can't be, because you feel things like guilt and shame. And so that went on for a long time. And then when I was 18, and in those days when you were 18, you were expected to leave the house. They didn't welcome you back like, hey, I'm 24 years old, mom and dad, can I stay with you? No, I mean, it was time to go. But when I was actually able to leave my environment is when I began to process what happened, and I didn't even understand it then. And so I started becoming very depressed and really troubled. When I wasn't growing up as a kid, I wasn't really troubled because I learned how to disassociate from my problems, and I learned how to put them away. And when I got out of that troubling environment, it all started inching in. I still didn't know what was happening then. I just knew I was a girl with mental health problems, a person who struggled with thoughts of suicide, never told anybody about it, and definitely never said why. I was always keeping a big secret. So that's unfortunately part of the story, but there's a lot of redemption there as well.
Well, I want to thank you for sharing that. I know that takes a lot of courage to talk about that, and I'm sorry that happened to you.
Thank you.
I think a lot of people that are listening, and for me, I know exactly what you're talking about. So there's some things that I'm glad that there's a redemption out and talk about it, and that you've had they can talk about it. That's the key thing. Like we've always said, is to being able to share what happened to you, what it happened, right? And hiding it doesn't, like you said, the key word is all it does is bring shame and a lot of feelings that I think as you work now in the mental health community, it's really one of the reasons that developmental trauma. That is one of the reasons why you see a lot of people that are struggling in the world. They just don't, they don't see it. They don't address it like you have in your life. And I really, really appreciate you sharing that with us. That takes a lot of courage. And so you talked about the suicidal thoughts. When do you remember the first time you having those?
When I was 18, I was driving. I was having problems with my boyfriend's parents. A lot of drama going on there. I couldn't handle the stress of it. It was overwhelming. And I was driving to a church function, and I thought if I could just take my hand off the wheel and drive into this ditch, this will all be over. And thankfully, I made it to the church, and I made it around some really encouraging friends. And I was really vague about what my struggle was, because I was in a church, and there's a big stigma, even still today, in churches with thoughts of suicide and suicide. And so, but they were able to give me hope. And that's what kept me going. But I would continue to struggle with thoughts of suicide up until last year. And I really didn't deal with all of my issues until last year. So that's been quite a journey. And now that I'm on the other side of it, it looks kind of like this beautifully messy thing. And when I say on the other side, I think when you have I was diagnosed with PTSD. I think I want to make it really clear, because I think this is really important. When you have PTSD, it doesn't necessarily mean that all of those thoughts are just going to go away. I've been given tools to be able to handle those when they come in. I know the people I need to talk to. I know now that I don't really want to die. that I know that that's not the solution to my problems. And I've received effective therapy that have helped me with the memories to kind of keep them at bay. But with someone who struggles with thoughts of suicide or SI, I feel sometimes like, people just want you to get over it and that's it. But it is still there. It's not like a raging monster, but it does sometimes tap you on the shoulder.
Yeah.
And it's hard to, I think that's a hard thought to communicate with people who don't understand, because then they think, oh, well, you're suicidal. No, I wouldn't say that about myself anymore. I would just say that, and I'm not comparing thoughts of suicide to addiction at all, but just like somebody has to stay dry if they are in any addiction or go through a recovery program, somebody who has PTSD, somebody who struggles with thoughts of suicide continuously, like I did, needs to keep themselves in check.
Yeah.
And keep their mental health in a good place.
Yeah, for me, I mean, it's almost, for me, it's a little over a year, but that was, for me, was Save a Warrior. We talk about them all the time. It's, that was one of that was the key, 72 hours of my life where I figured out exactly all the things you're talking about and to put on perspective. And I said, but yeah, you're right. I mean, I have it that, PTS, I don't like to use the D word on that.
Okay.
But PTS, no, it's fine. But I never use, the PTS. I have it that that it is something that you can recover from. Mm-hmm. Not that none of those things ever go away. It's always a part of who I am. But right. Like you said before, you hit the nail on the head. I do, I have things that I do every day to help keep me where those when those thoughts start to creep in, or, just to keep me on edge, like I have, my rituals that I do. I know that I can, people will talk, I've shared a lot of them with most of the people in the room down here. Like, people think they're crazy. I don't care. It's what I do to keep myself, those thoughts, a little bit different terms, the manager, the firefighter at bay, so that I can, be present and live my life. But, those things never go away. Those parts of me always exist.
Right.
But you don't have to I don't let those parts define who I am anymore. I don't let them make an excuse for me to go out and make stupid decisions, to fuck off being, a man of my word, all these other things. It's just, that's where it's at. But yeah, I have it that you can get through that process where, and it's not a popular opinion, because in the veteran community, PTSD, it can get you a lot of money in the VA term. And if you're diagnosed by the VA, that's a hard thing that a lot of people don't want to get through it. But if you really want to address it, like you said before, to find out why you're feeling the way you're feeling, if you want to live a better life, you want to be present, you want to not be controlled by the past. Right. It can be, it's a manageable thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I found that to be true for myself. It's just, I didn't really know that that's what I was struggling with until last year, when the memories of what I went through as a child started coming to the surface. It started mimicking, my workplace started kind of mimicking what I went through as a child in a workplace setting through work. No abuse was happening at the work, but that kind of unsettled feeling of never feeling safe and secure started to manifest itself at my work. And then that's how I ended up crying all the time at work and being overwhelmed with flashbacks. And then I decided I would reach out for help. And I did. And I got great help. And with a lot of work for a solid year, a lot of tears, a lot of several relapses, so many EMDR sessions on my part, I was able to get to a point. I'm so thankful for my therapist. Get to a point where I'm in a safe place now.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's an interesting, like you're not the first guest to talk about, and I talk about a lot is, that the first 18 years of life, that formative trauma is what the term moves back and forth. It was formative trauma. Now it's back to developmental trauma. Those impact you for the rest of your life. Like you said earlier that, something happened to you, a small part of you went away, like your inner child, had to go away to stay safe. This other personality or people came online to protect you, and that person kind of took, for me at least, took over the show. Like that Joker was running around all the time. You know what I mean? And even at 50 years old, even at 51 now, actually 52 this month, that guy can come out if I'm not, like you said, doing the work and saying, hey, like I have to tell that guy, like, listen, man, like I don't need you right now. Like I know you've helped me in the past, but like, get in the stands. I got this. I don't need you to. We don't need to act like we're 15 years old again.
Right. And it comes out at such the most inopportune times, in a way, like I had a recent episode where it's taking me a lot shorter now to kind of get over like if I feel like I have like I guess this is just my term for it, like a PTSD episode where a lot of that negative talk and self-speak. And then I start getting flashbacks from my childhood and stuff. Something happened where two people didn't like my opinion on something, and that was it. And I'm like, why is that it? Why not the thing that happened last week? That was way bigger deal than this. And so I had at that, when that happens, I have to do I do what I call prayer walking. I go out and I pray, and then I do some deep breaths and call my therapist.
Those are all great things. I take cold showers, I meditate, and I call guys from Saul. It's the same.
Right.
But it's interesting how you said that. You talked about how those things are triggered, and I think that's the key thing of, because I can't thank you enough for having the courage to bring this up about developmental trauma, because a lot of people don't want to talk about it.
No,
we don't have to get into the details about to understand and everybody can understand what we're talking about. Right. But those key things do make you start to act a different way for the rest of your life. Those things like why, people not accepting you, why is that? Like when you start looking at, something happened when you were young, when like people were, super critical of you. Like my dad's listening here and he knows we talked about, but my mom was like super critical of me, like very critical, like everything I did. And it started early, and it was all the time, like all the time. So I always felt like I had to please her. And then when I didn't please somebody and somebody criticized me, all of a sudden I'm like, I'm a piece of shit because you don't like, what do you mean you don't like how I formatted the slide?
Right.
It's crazy stuff. But once you start to dig down about where that comes from and understand that those thoughts are, I have, my terminology we use in Save a Warrior is the managers, right? Okay. That person is talking to you and telling you it's not really what's going on. That's not what's happening. Like that person doesn't think you're the worst employee. They cannot like that. Maybe it's not that, maybe it's not good.
Right.
Imagine that.
Exactly. For me, what I was doing as a kid, and I don't know if this is true for you, but I was constantly trying to read the room of the adults that I was in. Are they happy? Are they sad? Are they happy with me? Are they upset with me? And so I would try to read their facial expressions, and my emotions would be calibrating with that. And that was constant. And so when that happens and that kind of pattern starts getting ingrained in your brain to where really what I went to my therapist about a year ago was saying, I'm having trouble with some of my friendships. Can you help me? I think this could possibly only take 4 weeks. And she was like, okay. And then, the dam broke, so to speak.
No, it's the same. I mean, for like, I was like always trying to make my mom happy. Right? That was always the key thing. And that didn't always go well. So it was always like, it's crazy to me. Like what I've learned, growing up is I lived life on a 7, right? Until about a little over like 14, 15 months ago, everything was a 7 to me, meaning like if a cup was out of place, if I came home to the house and something wasn't right, like I was like at a 7, like it was end of the world if that
Yeah.
if that plate didn't get put away. And it's not, my mom is passed a long time ago, and I don't hold this against her anymore by any means, and it's not making her wrong, but that had consequences, right? So I was always on edge to be like, I would be the guy who was like, I still do it. You probably noticed that some things were going on here. I'm going to move stuff around because it's just something in me is always like, there was like the real times is like, sometimes my mom would come down and it was okay for that glass to be there. Other times she would come down and it was there and it wasn't good. And
now your brain is wired for crisis.
Right.
So when something's out of place, that's a 7, and it shouldn't be a 7.
No,
right?
Yeah.
My kids, after a significant portion of my healing happened last year, my daughter with autism, who has no filter, which is wonderful and scary at times, but it's good when she's honest with me. She said, there's 2 moms, old mom and new mom, and you're new mom. And that's good. And that was a little bittersweet because I know that in raising my kids, I was angry mom. And I never wanted to be that way, but I didn't know how to be any different. And until last year, until I received healing from a lot of things that happened with my past, then that kind of started to dissolve and I became happy mom, pleasant mom. And you don't always have to be that way, but now I have to talk to the consequence of that is that now my kids are wired to expect when I get upset or angry, this is angry mom, and angry mom isn't going to go away. She's going to stay angry mom forever.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times when I feel, I guess, kind of buzzed with crisis, I have to stop and tell them, I understand that you're seeing me be angry now, but this is not angry mom coming back. It's just mom expressing her emotions. Yeah. I will be new mom again.
Yeah, let me go for power prayer, like prayer walk or whatever. No, right. I feel the same way. I mean, I was angry. Like that's one of the things that actually like, it was the reason, that being angry dad or angry like Che, that's all the time when I was home was the reason why I was the same way you were. I would be driving down the road and be like, there's an embankment or, a wall. And I was like, man, if I can end this all right now, because I would know an event was coming up. Like say, for example, just last week, Thanksgiving, like I would just be telling myself like, it's Thanksgiving. Like, don't worry about it. Everything's great. Your whole family's here. And then like within like a minute, I would just be a fucking asshole. Like and then I'd come down here or I'd break away from it and just be like, I need a break and I'm going to be fine for this thing. And it just was like, it always happened. It always happened. And it was like, that people don't understand that's enough for you to be like,
yep.
There was so much like shame that I had about it. I would come down here, I would go places and be like, man, I'm never going to do this again. Like I would just talk myself into it. Like there's, just every angle you could have about it. And then I would just fucking an hour later do the same thing. And I just felt like I was out of control. And a lot of it is, like you said, is addressing what happened as a young kid in the 18 years of life when you're young. It's not like, I don't want to make my mom sound like she was this awful person. She wasn't, but there was things that happened that it made this person, right? It made me a person come online that was always like that. It was like, critical of, a lot of stuff with developmental trauma, I think for people listening, and is that, my mom took that from someone else, right?
Yeah.
I took that from her, right? Like it's something that's passed on, right? So when I look at my mom now, I used to have a ton of anger for my mom. Like I love my mom unconditionally. Like I'm complete with my mom. I get it all. I just wish I had the chance I wish I'd had the courage to do what I did 15 months ago.
Yeah.
Be able to talk about it and do it, because I have no anger towards her anymore. Like I understand it. She was doing the best she could.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. She was reacting to me because she wasn't happy with how she was doing with stuff.
Right.
I mean, and when you think about it that way, a lot of this, the trauma that you have as a young kid, it goes away. You know what I mean? And like the thing I go now is I still worry about my sons, right? I have 3 sons that I was asshole dad for 50 years. Like, I'm glad you did it a little bit early, but asshole Chase still comes out. Don't get me wrong, but it's that old person.
Asshole Mel comes out.
That asshole person is not going to be running the day. Like for me, when that happens,
exactly.
the big thing when that happens now, it's like you said before, my wife will say something like, maybe you should go meditate or do something, or
Prayer
you know what I
walk.
mean? Yeah, or yeah, whatever. Or I just like break away. I just leave the situation and go away. And now I'm armed enough that I can come down here and like I know in myself, but I was not able to figure this out by myself. I call dudes that I know, safe guys, and I'm like, I need to vent about what's going on. Like my fucking, this is going on. I'm pissed off about this. I want to punch my fucking hole in the wall, and then like vent it out. And then I go back and everything's fine. And then the big part of me is now acknowledging that I was wrong. Right. So like when those things happen, I never used to do it. But when asshole Che comes out and I do something that I shouldn't have done, I'm very cognizant to make sure I get amends with that person and understand that it's not them, right? That's the big thing with me. It's like, I really wasn't even mad at you. I'm mad at myself because of this, right? And that's
so important.
Yeah.
That's in that instance when it happens and you blow up, that's the right thing to do is to go back and say, hey, I'm sorry. I was wrong. Can you forgive me? Those are hard words to say sometimes, but necessary, because it's not only it's healing for that person as well. So
I mean, we haven't talked about the Air Force show.
Let's talk about it.
We just jump past all this kind of. Are we? We're at 39. You want to? Do you need some more whiskey?
Maybe. Wait 1 second.
So we'll do our first. We'll take a break. We'll do our first. We'll let you off the hook for a little bit. We'll do our first featured whiskey. We're going back to a Jim Beam product. We haven't talked about this in a while, but we talked about Jim Beam in the past. Jim Beam is located in Claremont, Kentucky. It produces some of the best-selling brands of bourbon in the world. Since 1795, there's been actually now it's 8 generations of Beam family that have been involved in making whiskey at the distillery. The brand became Jim Beam in 1943 in honor of James B. Beam, who rebuilt the business after Prohibition. Fred Noe and Freddie Noe are now the master distillers. Fred took over in 2007, and I'm not exactly the exact sure date that they gave Freddie. Keith should know. I can't remember. It's an inside joke. But yeah, so it's now the 8th generation of family Beam distillers. So the actual distillery and the brand was bought and purchased by Beam Suntory Holdings in 2014. This is one we haven't talked about, but this is Baker's. Baker's is one of the 4 bourbons that comprise of Jim Beam small batch bourbon collections. The other ones are Basil Hayden, Knob Creek, and Booker's. Booker's. Baker's falls in line with the 3rd highest proof wise. And these came about, these originally were small batch, about 200 barrels, but now they're actual single barrel started in 2019, I'm sorry. So this one's actually 8 years and 6 months old, 107 proof, so a little lower than what you had before.
Wow.
You were up in the high proof. We started off with that, but this one is, like I said, 8 years and 6 months old. Mash bill, 77% corn, 13% rye, and 10% malted barley. Oh, cool. And they have they look different now, right? Don't they, guys? The bottles look different now, right? They're taller. Yeah, they're taller now. They've changed a little bit, but we'll give you some of that.
Did you say 8 generations?
Yeah, the 8th generation distiller. Yeah, Freddie is the 8th.
That's amazing. That really is amazing. So, cheers to healing, huh?
Cheers to healing, yeah. We got to get into the Air Force now. We're like rewinding. I love it. We're all over the place.
That's good.
A little bit smoother than the wild turkey.
Yes.
I like the rare breed too, though. We'll get to that one as well. So we talked about this 18 years, you leave the house. Is that how long before you joined the Air Force after that?
I went to college for a year and a half, and then I left. I don't know. I left for my boyfriend. I'm not married to the guy. Thank God. I think he's gay now. That wouldn't have
allegedly.
Right.
We don't know. Allegedly.
it wouldn't have worked out. It wouldn't have worked out. So, and then I was at a dead end job. I was working at a countertop place doing orders, and I ended up getting a major order wrong. So they let me go, and I didn't know what I was going to do with my life. And a major in the military, in the Air Force, was doing all of the ad campaigns for the Air National Guard at the time over down in Washington, D.C. And he said, you should consider the Air National Guard. And I said, well, I'll only consider it if they are going to pay for my school, because I really wanted to go back to school. And he said, oh, yeah, they do that. And they'll give you a signing bonus. And they'll, he listed all. And then the Air National Guard is a great guard to be in. You only have to go to basic training for 6 weeks. That was very short. Now it's 9 weeks. And I was like, okay, I can do anything for 6 weeks. And I ended up signing up and doing supply management. You can't fly without supply, just so you know.
Oh, that's yeah.
And I went to basic training, and it rocked my world. When I tell you, look, I was dresses, pantyhose, makeup, hair, girly girl, theater, nothing. Nobody suspected that I would, or expected that I would ever go into the military.
And what was your family's reactions to that? Were they just... So
anything that I chose to do, my family was just like, okay. And I think that they were proud, but you know what? I don't know. And so I think there were a couple of family members that were really surprised. And my grandpa was pretty proud because it was my grandpa and there was nobody else. And I don't think anybody else since my nephew is a part of the Army now. And
you did it right.
Yeah. That's what I hear. I tried to get him to go to Rickenbacker, but he wouldn't. He wouldn't.
Thank God.
So 9/11 happened, and I've already swore in. It happened 3 weeks after I swore in, and I went to Lackland Air Force Base for basic training, and it was an incredible, I will say this looking back now, it was an incredible experience. I would do it again. And I know it sounds so crazy to say that, but I really value, I became a woman there. And I entered in as this kid that didn't know what she wanted. And I left with so much pride in doing something very difficult. It wasn't the most difficult basic training. I wasn't doing Marines training, even, Army training or anything like that. But it was what I needed. They're telling me you got to low crawl across gravel as a part of training. And it's like, what the heck?
No.
And I'm getting cussed out by my drill sergeant. I just had never experienced those things. And now I am so thankful that I was there for that and that I did that. And I'm so thankful that I went through. I actually never deployed because when I got into the Maryland Air National Guard, they just came back. And then they went back again, but I was just getting out of the Maryland Air National Guard to transfer to South Carolina because I had just gotten married. So then I went into South Carolina Air National Guard, and they had just gotten back from deployment. So I never deployed, but I did my 6 years, and I'm so proud that I did that.
No, you should be. I mean, thank you for your service. I think it's an interesting time. Like, we're now in the times of people who haven't deployed. Like, you start seeing pictures of the military where people don't have deployment, like combat patches, and you're kind of like, how does this person I have? And then you're like, oh, the 220-year wars are over. So, 6 years is a lot of, 6 years is a lot compared to what people don't do. So you should definitely be proud of that.
Yeah. And in the Air Force, some people don't know. I don't know. They had non-deployable slots. And then I was put in to one of those because I was the only supply management specialist for air traffic controllers. And that was interesting. When I got out, I couldn't wait to get out. And
I loved it, but that is what everybody in the military says.
But then when I got out, I wanted to go back in. And I actually tried to go back in a year and a half ago, and they wouldn't take me. So I have a Master of Divinity in Hospital Chaplaincy. And I really wanted to go back in and be a chaplain for the Air Force. So I went over to Rickenbacker and I said, can we make this happen? And they said, maybe we can. That process, they figured out everything I had like wrong with me as far as, physically and stuff like that. And they said, okay, this is what you have to do. You have to go to the psychologist and get them to tell us you're okay. You have to try to be off of high blood pressure medication. And you have to try to get your anemia fixed and worked out. And you have to get all of your medical records from as far back as you can. It took me 7 months to get all of that stuff together. Then I went to MEPS. It was so bizarre doing that as a 42-year-old woman. And
compared to when you were 18, right?
And everybody was 18, right? And nothing was working out. And I had 7 months worth of work in my paperwork. And then I took that damn hearing test. And a level 3 is failed. And I can hear, but I couldn't hear those teeny tiny beeps.
Yeah, either can I. Don't worry. It's
okay. And after all of that work, I was so hopeful, and I thought it was going to be a yes. And then it came back. It went all the way to the waiver people, to the Attorney General of the Air Force. And they were like, because of this condition, this condition, and you can't hear, they didn't let me back in. And it's probably up there on one of the major disappointments of my life, because I really wanted to be a chaplain in the Air Force and serve women in that way. So if there's anybody out there
that can help, yes,
that will give me a waiver to be a chaplain in any
branch, I'll take it.
I'm your girl.
I do love they made you go to MEPS. So
it was so embarrassing. So
MEPS is like I don't think we've ever talked about MEPS on the podcast. I mean, that's an interesting.
Really?
No one's ever. I mean, that's an interesting process if you've never been to it. Don't
let it scare you, but.
Well, I don't even know if I think the closest thing there's been a couple like World War II movies where they show I think Captain America, they show them going through it like a form of MEPS.
Oh, yes.
Remember that? But nobody's ever showed you. It's they are prodding, poking, everything you can imagine. There's a ton of stress into it. It is high
stress. And I was on blood pressure medication, and my blood pressure was still high going through there, because I think because I wanted it so bad, and I wanted it to work out so bad. I could see it was one of those things that I'm
not laughing at you, but it's just
but when you can visualize something and you want this to work out, because it would have meant so much to me to be able to come back and serve people in that way. And there's a lot more women in the Air Force than when I was in 20 years ago, a lot more. And they need care too. And they need spiritual care too. And not all the time are women going to be able to go to a man and tell them, can you help me with my sexual trauma?
Yeah.
And so I was really passionate about meeting that need. And when it didn't happen, I tried to pretend that it didn't absolutely crush me, but it did.
I'm sorry that happened.
Okay.
Of all of that, the high blood pressure one is a good one, because I was trying to talk myself down, talk my blood pressure down myself, but then I feel like every time I tried to bring it down, it was like it'd be going through the roof. And now I'm like, I'm on blood pressure medicine. That's okay.
So you know what I used to think I could do? I used to think that I could tell my mind to not have high blood pressure and that it would work.
You didn't tell the psychiatrist that part. That might have that might not have been. That might,
I did. I did.
I didn't really mean that part of it. No, I'm kidding. No, it's okay.
I think I told my doctor, and she was like,
What
are you talking about? And I said, I just really thought that I could tell my mind, lower your blood pressure, and my body would follow suit. But my type of high blood pressure is hereditary. I've had high blood pressure since in my 20s.
Yeah.
And so there's nothing, and I think they would have given me a waiver if it had just been that. But then, they don't like to accept people with mental health issues, and they don't like to accept anemics. Yeah. And in a way, for women, that's already a negative, because what are we doing every month? And I'm sorry to bring this into your podcast, but as far as just being a woman in the military and trying to get back in, it would almost be impossible of where I am at as a woman with perimenopause and everything like that, not being anemic. Anemic is...
Yeah, I think, it's interesting with the mental health one is one. If I look at it, I'm kind of like, I get a little racket about that, because that's the problem. Is I think probably if I were to, I don't even know what the percentage would be of how many people that are in the military right now have some type of mental health struggles. I don't want to say problem. I'm pretty sure a lot of them already have it, but yeah, I think the interesting thing you said before was, that to have that, having a woman that's been through it to understand, for another woman to talk to, because I'm trying to think, I never even met a female chaplain.
It's few and far between.
Yeah.
There's a group of them. I looked them up, and they're doing amazing work. And the funny thing is that because of my mental health issues, because of what I've went through, that would have made me a damn good chaplain, to be able to talk to them. Yes, I'm a person recovering from PTSD, but that makes it so much more. That aspect of my life makes me be able to connect with other people in a way I've never connected before. That's how you and I connected. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that is like, you can't make, looking at I know that was devastating to you, but you can't fault the establishment, right? That's what the Air Force and that's what the military is. That's how it works. I mean, the deck is kind of always stacked against you, and they're going to do what it's how the system works. So you can't fight the system. And for the record, I still think that I could, on the hearing test, if I can make myself hear better, if I concentrate, the door was open, if I hold a certain way. So, you may be able to control blood pressure. I can control hearing. It's a flawed. Yeah, it's a crazy thing.
It was MEPS is. I don't want to discourage anybody out there. MEPS is great, but it's an experience, right? It's kind of like a rite of passage.
I think it's one of the things that hasn't changed. You talk. It's still they take you to a hotel. You still have a roommate, that some person you've never met before. You're sharing a room with them still, and then you go and you get poked and prodded like you've never done before. There's no they do everything at MAPS. I mean, there's no hiding anything. You're like,
and they have to.
And then they're like, "Thanks for coming, but we don't want you." You know what I mean?
And they have to check if you're the gender that you declare.
Yeah, the duck walk, I think, was a tough one. That's one that you never forget. I think that's been going on for years.
When I was 18 or 19, the guy that was checking the women had checked women for 50 years. He was so, I didn't know if he could see. He was so old.
He's got a down pat though.
And he had a hunchback and everything like that. And they were like, he loves doing what he's doing. And I'm like thinking, of course he does.
Well, I mean, for all people around the military, anytime you do that, the same thing when you go to when you go to advanced camp, or what they're calling out, when you as an officer, the physicals, it's like Bragg used to have that line you just followed. And one was, if I remember correctly, I may be wrong, it's been a while, but if you're doing a flight physical, there was a different color because you were going to get different things checked or whatever. But it was literally walk up and you just hand you hand a folder to someone. They're like, come on in. They're like, drop your drawers. You're just it's like an assembly line. Then you're after that, you're it's just, I mean, it's a shocker for, and I can only imagine now we're cause I hear stories about people talking about not being able to share a room with another person. Like I could be in a hotel room, like with anybody and be fine. Like, I mean, like, but people are like, I did that. Like I actually shared a room. Last time I shared a room was a guy that I used to work with, and our boss his reservation was not, it didn't have a reservation. So there's only 2 rooms instead of 3. And I'm like, well, the boss has the separate room. We'll stay together.
Right.
And like, I was totally fine with it. The other guy was, you know, in his 30s, was totally like freaked out about this. I'm like, dude, we're going to be fine. Like, it's like the door locks. We're going to be, and I'd said some stuff I'm not going to say on the camera just to harass him a little bit, but it was definitely like where it's just, I mean, I think in the military, you get to know what it means. You just get normal. And that's the start of what it's going to be like when you're, but MEPS, we haven't talked about MEPS before. I
know that there's some people that have probably been on your podcast that have bad memories of being in, just because of the things that they went through and the things that they've seen. And my heart, I work as a suicide preventionist, and my heart is bent towards the veteran population and what they have experienced. I was one of the ones that, you know, that had an experience. I was able to seemingly walk away unscathed, that it was the better part of my life than what I had experienced. Yeah,
I was going to ask, like, so, like, you know, that, and what you said before, I think was interesting. Like, it's the same, it's a story over time that you always talk about. Like, a lot of people go to the military. The military sucks. If you're in it, you're like, you love it, you hate it, you can't wait to get out. When you get out, all you want to do is go back in. That's why, you know, you find yourself always like, because there are, like, as bad as the people that have on all the, you know, the bad parts of my that happened to me, there's still so many great moments that come to it. So it is like a love hate, and it's a hard thing to do. But unfortunately, like what you're talking about, when you have someone that has, you know, developmental trauma that you know that you have, and then on top of that you get moral injury, like that, you see some things that happen, you know, that's that community that just everything collapses, right? That's where I found myself collapsing, like, oh shit, like I don't know how to deal with these things. So, but I still look back, and most of the time, if I really, it depends on the mind. Like the before I was, you know, before Save a Warrior, I was that guy who was looking at always the negative stuff, right? That was an excuse to act like an asshole, right? To be bitter about things. But now, I mean, when you look back at the military, there's so many great, I mean, there's a lot of like professional things I'm thankful for, but there's so many personal things that happen and experiences that, like, when you tell them, you're just like, dude, it was a really good time in my life. I mean, there's a lot of, like, I was with my friends. I was doing something I was so proud of. I was with my friends, you know what I mean? And I was like, it was just like, it was really like as bad. I mean, as bad as it sucked, it was really some of the best times of your life. It's the craziest thing to do. It's a normal thing that I think a lot of us go through. But
I was, when I was in, for the majority of the time, I was married, and I was also in school, and I was getting a theater performance major at school. That was my major. And somebody told my husband once that I was using my theater performance major as a way for people to look at me and be filled with pride in like a negative way. And my husband looked at that person and said, she doesn't need theater to feel pride. What she's doing in the military, that's what she's proud of. That's what fills her with pride. And that is so true. I was so happy. I was like, thank you, hubby.
Remember that. When he does something bad, remember that moment always. He's always got that. And if you can't remember that, like, John, remember that. That's something you can always pull out that card, throw that card out and do that. But so, like, back to the Air Force, you know, you talked about before, it's a, like, for all of us, it really is a smaller, it's just a part of our life, no matter how long you're in there. So what do you consider to be the biggest thing you learned from your time on the Guard?
In the Guard, I think it was the people that I met. I was fairly sheltered, good little Christian girl, always did the right thing. always in a troubling environment. My church environment wasn't very good. The Christian school environment I was in wasn't very good. My home environment wasn't very good. And so I've been told this whole time, don't interact with people from the world, right? And I get into the military and I meet some of the best people I've ever met, that I know that when the rubber meets the road, that they would die for me, and that they would protect me and keep me safe. They're some of the only ones that didn't objectify me as a woman, and where I was experiencing that in my Christian settings. And so I learned so much about people, different cultures, different people from with different ethnicities, and just a welcoming crew. What I learned about myself and about other cultures and how the world really works, it was invaluable for me.
Yeah. Yeah, the military is like I hate to say that, the melting pot, but there's once you get in there's people that it's just crazy. Like when you get to know like where they came from and what they're doing, and like you're talking to some guy and you're like, what do you where are you from? Oh, I was going to Stanford, and I just didn't want to go to Stanford more. Now I just enlisted in the Army. You're like, what? Like you were at Stanford? Like there's stories that will blow people's mind. Not that everybody's great in the military. There are some, there are some turds and some not so good people, but just like anywhere in the world. But so other than not becoming a chaplain,
okay, yeah,
what is your biggest disappointment or that you had in the military, or failure you'd say your time in the Guard? Or do you not have one?
That I know that I do have one. I think about this often, actually. I wasn't in the right specialty. Supply management is great. You can't fly without supply, but it just wasn't.
You gotta get a tattoo that says that. You can't fly without supply. I love it.
You can, but it really wasn't. It wasn't what I needed to be in, and it didn't match my personality or the way that my brain works. And I wish that I was a first shirt, or a part of the chaplaincy, part of the HR department, something like that. And I think if I had stayed in longer, I would have pursued those avenues. So that is one of the biggest regrets that I have, is not enjoying the job that I did. And I know that not everybody can in the military. You're given what you're given. And I chose what I chose. But at the same time, there was some wiggle room there, and I wish I would have pursued that more. But, when a $5,000 signing bonus is staring at you, and I had, $100 in my bank account.
So
I'll take it.
When do I leave?
Supply, they were giving out pretty nice bonuses.
I get a place to stay. With,
it was boring. It was boring to me.
Yeah.
So
we'll transition to the next phase of that. So you decide to quit on the military. I'm winking. I'm winking. No big deal. You decide to quit. You have some. Well, before that, you became a teacher.
No,
I
was a teacher
at the time, right?
I was a teacher / student at the time.
When you're
and then my husband and I decided to be missionaries, Christian missionaries.
And so that's what I was gonna say. She leaves like I leave the Air Force. It's the Guard, no big deal. I'm gonna just go to Belize and be a missionary. I mean,
we were out in the middle of nowhere.
So this is 2007, and you and your husband decide to head to Belize.
I went to Belize with the school I was working with, and I saw the area, and I just developed a love for the people. And I told my husband, hey, let's check this out. We need to see if we can help these people. And he agreed. And then we had to spend 2 years raising our support. So everything that you can imagine that you need here to live off insurance, Social Security, all this stuff, we had to raise. And we raised all of that money and that support. 2 years later, we were in Belize, Central America, had a nightmare 3.5 years. And it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my whole life. I call it my necessary nightmare. But that was the time when I really discovered I was suffering from depression, and finally went home after we discovered my son had cerebral palsy. Went back to South Carolina, decided that we wanted to go back out again, and ended up in Guadalajara, Mexico. And we stayed there for 4 years until we came home.
So how many years total as a missionary?
10 years total.
Just 10 years. No big deal. She's like 10 years. Man, only 10 years. I mean,
it was 10 of the best and the worst times of my whole life. So
what was the worst part about it?
The worst part was watching our children struggle in a completely different cultural environment. And that will rip your heart out in a heartbeat. Watching them struggle with the language. And then also, we thought that my son would be able to get all of what he needed there. Actually, we thought he would improve, and watching him not make any improvements and not advance, and having to go through 2 major surgeries in Mexico where, we were just kind of like deer in headlights. It was so hard to do that. And we had, I actually over, not in Belize, but in Mexico, another missionary made propositioned me for sex. And that was probably one of the hardest things I went through over there, along with a couple of other things. And I didn't know what to do with that, given what I had been through as a child. And when he approached me and manipulated the conversation in a way that I knew what he was asking for, he was 40 years my senior and well respected in the community. And, I did what a person who is a survivor of sexual abuse sometimes does, and just bury it and not report it and make everybody else swear not to report it. And then had to live with that guilt and that shame for years until I did report it last year. So it was really tough.
Again, I can't thank you for your honesty. Thank you for sharing that. I'm kind of over keeping everything in, and there are some things that I won't say and that I won't share, but I think it's so important, especially for women, to know that, taking that extra step to report is so important. And I wish I had done it sooner. I can't live in guilt for not, it was understandable given what I'd gone through. I think for me, what tore me up inside was I thought that I was making other women suffer because I hadn't done my job, but they wouldn't have listened to me anyway. And I went and reported him through an advocate, and they decided that they said they were going to check it out, and we'll see. I don't know if I'll ever hear from that mission board again, but that's what's discouraging to me, I think, out of my own Christian community, are all these reports of sexual abuse coming out. And it happened. Words like that and men implying things happened in my church, in my school to me, continued. And I just not going to put up with it anymore. That's where I'm at. That's what happened, right?
Right.
No, like I said, Mel, it's so humbling to sit across from you and and have you share that. I'm sorry those things happened to you. But listen to it like you did stand up for yourself. You eventually said, so, we can't go back and change the past. So
Nope.
I'm super proud of you that you decided to say something, and that's a big thing. And like you said, talking about it and hiding it is not the answer. That just, you brought on a word again. Every time you hide or not talk about something, the shame monster comes out, right? It's a very powerful thing that a lot of people don't want to address, but that's where that shame comes, like you talked about, shame and not, reporting it. Am I responsible for him to do it to somebody else? And, all these kind of things, but you did what you could do. You reported it. And
and I want to be clear with anybody listening. It is totally their choice to tell or not to tell, to reveal or not to reveal. But what I'm saying is that there are people out there that are willing to help get things reported if they need to be reported. And yes, it's hell doing it, and it's very difficult, but it can be done. And so if that empowers you in any way, do what you need to do.
So I have a crazy question now.
Yes.
It's going to get deep. So one of the things you wrote to me, that your faith was huge to you, and you've talked about, we're an hour and 15 minutes in. Obviously you have to have strong faith to go and become a missionary for 10 years. But then you've also in the past, 75 minutes shared that a lot of things have happened in your life that would make someone be like, fuck God, fuck faith. You talk about you start off with your kids. You talked about, what happened to you, as growing up as a young woman, a young child. You had talked about what happened, as a missionary. Is like, what keeps you believing in the faith with all those bad things that have happened to you? Has your faith ever wavered, or has it always been locked on for you?
Oh, no, it hasn't always been locked on. It's definitely wavered. I've been through several points, one in particular with God where I told God, I don't know if you're good anymore. And I think for me, especially this year, what it came down to is I was so wrapped up in religion, what my pastors were telling me, and this is right and this is wrong, when you discover that a lot, at least in my circles, they didn't even live by the same standard that they were talking to me about. And when the rubber met the road, what it came down to for me is just my personal relationship with Jesus Christ and my faith in him, and my love for him, and believing in his love for me. And it came down to love. And so like I said, I'm Masters of Divinity major. I like talking about theology and doctrine and stuff like that. But my personal faith is not wrapped up in having to have all of those questions answered. I know that Jesus loves me. I know what he did for me on the cross. And I know that he is living, and that he is somebody I can trust in. And I know that that's who I love. And that is, for me, it's the gospel in the best form. And that's what keeps me going and keeps me trusting, not what everybody else is saying. Because if I get wrapped up in religion, fail me every time. Religion will fail you every time. But my personal relationship with Jesus Christ will not. So that's where I stand. That's what I believe.
Mic drop. Like, we can drop the mic. You can hit the mic or whatever. Like, boom. Josh is doing it.
Cheers.
Cheers. Yeah. Look. No. Because that's one thing that when you, that's my whole struggle with faith, and my belief has always been of so focused on the negative, right? Or like how these bad things happen, and I'm very much like you before. The people you watch that say they're people of religion, you just watch their overall behavior, and I'm just like, this doesn't make any sense to me. So I think it's definitely a personal thing for me as well. So we talked about the bad part about 10 years down there. What was the best part about being a missionary for 10 years?
the people and the food. The Belizean people are the best. Once you go to Belize and you start talking to a Belizean, you won't want to leave. They're the best. The people in Guadalajara, Mexico are some of the friendliest people I've ever met. And the food in central Mexico is out of this world. You won't have any of it's some of the best I've ever had. So have you ever had a steamed taco?
I don't know. I lived a long time in Texas, so I want to say I have some pretty good Tex-Mex and Mexican food. Definitely different than Central Ohio. But steamed taco, I might have had. I think I might have had. I don't know.
They're called tacos al vapor, and we had the best taco stand right catty corner from our house. We just walked out there, and they'd have a spicy peanut sauce, and you put the shredded lettuce and the salsa all over it. Just eat it right there. And
kind of like Chipotle. I'm joking. I'm kidding.
No. Okay. I'm so sorry to everybody out there, but Chipotle is terrible. I hate it. I'm sorry.
That was a joke, everyone. Well, there goes our sponsorship with Chipotle. Remember, Mel's comments do not represent the poor of the Patriots family in our belief.
I'm sorry.
Remember,
my husband doesn't understand.
Every Tuesday, is free Chipotle day. No, but I just want to be clear that you're putting the Belizean people over the Mexican people. Like, you were pretty hard on that. Like, you ranked them. You were like, Belizean people the best.
Belize was the worst time I've had. One of the worst times I've ever had in my life over there. Extremely difficult environment and difficult people. But once you get in, you're theirs. There would have been nothing that could have touched us there. I believe now that we were completely safe and protected, even though we were living in a pretty dangerous environment.
So for someone that doesn't know, what is, like, for 10 years, what is a missionary? What's your main focus as a missionary in Belize?
That's a good question.
And
we did various things. We worked in Belize. We worked in the middle of the Belizean jungle, in a village. They didn't wear grass skirts or anything, just regular clothes. But we worked in a small village, and we helped the local pastor. We did Bible studies. We helped build houses, and we worked in the local school. And then in Mexico, we worked some with church planting, but our main focus ended up being a support group we had for people with disabilities. And we met with parents on a monthly basis. We had what we called a gala every year, and we had a summer camp for kids with disabilities. And it was a beautiful thing.
So the two places you had, I think, it was the co-director of Together in Hope, that was in Guadalajara.
Yeah.
And then the Belize Mission and Retreat, which was the Converge Mission Board?
Yeah.
In Belize?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So what did you, like, the 10 years, what did you miss most about the States? Because I would have thinking air conditioning would be
AC. Yes.
AC. We got a high five, and that would be the first thing. I'm like, all these other places, I'm always like, shit. What I love about America, air conditioning.
Yes. And convenience.
Yeah.
In Belize, I had to make everything. In Mexico, I had a lot more access to things, but they were obviously Mexican products, which was fine. They worked the same, but there was just some things that we couldn't find there.
So do you still make some pretty good dishes from Belize and Mexico?
Yes, I do.
What's your go-to dish now?
My go-to Belizean dish is called fry jacks. If you've ever had like fry bread, like Indian reservations sometimes sell that. It's like empanadas, and then you dip it in beans or you cover it with honey. So good. And then hands down, Mexican is it's called carne en su jugo. It is meat in its juices. It's a steak soup.
Hey, I feel like you sent me a pretty good bio that you didn't mention anything about these foods. I'm thankful for the food we had
It's chunks
the macaroni
of
and
steak.
cheese
Right.
that we had tonight and the shepherd's pie, but I'm thinking both of those empanadas would have been good.
Chunks of
Yeah.
steak.
Yeah, I hope our resident chef is listening to this.
Chunks of steak
Yeah.
in meat broth. Can't get enough.
Yeah, he's actually. The funniest thing is Nate, who's one of our 2 resident chefs. He is literally over there Googling it already.
Yes. Yes, I'll send you the recipe too.
Ooh,
So I have a really good one.
all right.
So
I mean, meat soup. Yeah, I'm in. I'm in
Yeah.
on it. So you do that for 10 years.
How
are you doing over there? You're so
I'm
good.
doing good.
We're so good. We're so good.
You put water in yours.
You got to hydrate. I mean, I'm trying to be responsible here. You don't want to go off the rails.
That's true.
I mean,
That's
no one
true.
needs me off the rails.
I think I'm going to stop.
We have to do one more feature though. We'll do a small one. Are you ready
Okay.
for that? Or you still have more though? Did you finish it? Okay, we're good. We got time. We got time. So 10 years, you and your husband. So the whole time, 10 years, all the kids are with you through
All the kids. My daughter was born in Arizona. My second oldest and my youngest, they were both born in Belize. So that was an experience.
So how does that work for citizenship for them?
They said my daughter is full blown Belizean. She has a social security number and everything. Okay. My son, we never got the social security number, but he could get one. There's not that many.
So dual citizenship still.
Dual citizenship. They could do that. That's great for them. I think maybe if they ever wanted it, I think it's a cool thing to have. Not necessary having.
So the oldest is what?
My oldest is.
That's one that has a social security number?
No, okay. She's from Arizona. She's really sad about that because more than anybody, she really enjoyed living overseas.
She should be thankful. In 3 years, you're heading her out. She's got to go to Belize. Like in the old schools come out. 3 years, you're out. Your mom said you only have 18 summers. That's it. You're out.
I am not like that at all. Like my kids can come back. My door is open. I don't know.
But we joke about that. I listen to a lot of podcasts and I listen to a lot of like different people, but it is crazy for our generation how many stories you hear. Like there's that was like that. Like I listened to a podcast one time and the guy had he was about to turn 18 in like 5 days or something, and he asked his dad some question about getting in school or something like that, and like 5 days later when he turned 18 he came home from school and like his bags were packed and was like, you're out. And he ended up joining the army. And it's just like, I'm sorry, the Marine Corps, but it's like, it's a crazy, you hear these stories like, if that's still happening, I'm not trying to tell people that you're being a bad parent, but
stop.
But don't. I mean,
that was my husband's
if you're 18
experience.
and you want to get out, I get it.
Yeah.
But like you hear it all the time though. It's so crazy. Just when you talk to people, because you ask somebody a question like about something, and especially on the holidays, man, how's their Thanksgiving, and a lady at work was like, it's awful. You know what I mean? You're like, what do you mean? She's like, I left home when I was 18. I'm, like, I don't go home. And you're like, and you understand that I think like with you showed tonight, what that means, a lot of things, it's obviously not a good place. You're escaping something, but when a parent is like, get out, you know what I mean?
Right. My parents didn't really shove us out, but it was just understood.
Yeah.
And I did end up coming back for a little while, and it was okay. It wasn't great, but my husband, that was very much what happened to him. It's once he hit 18, it was expected that, we'll help you with your schooling, but there's no coming back and living with us,
my dad just looked at me like a weird look, and I'm just like, I'm thinking like, I need to really, really, really evaluate what's going on in the Miller home with my kids. We'll lighten it up a little bit. People don't know all my kids. I'm blessed to have all my kids still living at home.
Okay.
You met my oldest, who's a nurse at OSU.
Okay.
So he gets paid with real money.
Is that Dr. Bachman?
He works the same. We'll get with the Dr. Bachman, but he gets paid with real money. And one of the things of like we've said, come move back with us, so you can pay off loans, all that kind of stuff, work it through. So he's doing that. And then my middle son, he just graduated. He's doing his master's. He's getting his MBA. Also works and makes his own real money.
Okay.
And then my youngest is about to turn 20. He's a student at the Ohio State University, who, if you missed anything, did lose to Michigan 13-10 in a huge upset. And if you know what's going on down here, they want Ryan Day's head. So if you're from Ohio, your name is Day, last name is Day, it's not safe for you. And I did not wear my sweatshirt to troll people, but I knew deep in my heart that Ohio State was going to lose. But that's for you, Josh. But so all of them live there. He doesn't make real money. So just yesterday, like at 8 o'clock in the morning, my wife gets on the family group text and says, I'm about to do a Target order. What does everybody need? And I'm like, all of a sudden, like the two guys who get real money are like, shampoo, deodorant. And I'm like, I'm at work and I'm like, okay. you get free free AC. You get all this kind of stuff. I'm like, what? Am I wrong that the guys that work there can go get their own fucking shampoo and deodorant? Am I wrong?
They absolutely. If he's getting his MBA, you said.
I mean, get his MBA.
One's a nurse. He could definitely at least go down to the gift shop and get his own.
Maybe you should talk to my wife after this podcast because I'm obviously wrong about this, but I'm very thankful that they're still with us. But I just wish they would buy their own. I mean, right? Am I wrong? I mean,
sounds like you're going soft.
I'm going soft. So kick them out when they're 18 and don't let them come back. No, I'm kidding. It's a different. Yeah, I'm still living that. That might be a good. The money I would have. I mean. And then obviously my wife's like, oh, I forgot to get you what you need. I'm like, well, everybody else has got their stuff like the Target, you know.
In your wife's defense, I always forget what my husband needs.
That's not.
Sorry.
It's good to know. It's good to know. I know that. I know that. I'm 26 years married. I'm always like, yeah, I know. But and then they argue about who's going to go get the Target order that they didn't pay for. It's like, okay, you're complaining about driving to get the Target order that you didn't pay for. So
you're gonna get.
I might have to talk to the kids about the toiletry.
Yeah.
I'm always getting myself in trouble. It's okay. I'm a pro at that. It's all right. So you leave the missions. You come back to the States, the land of air conditioning. What's next for Mel?
I tried to get a job. Nobody wants to hire a washed up missionary. I did. It just doesn't translate. That does not translate. I did directorship work. I did all kinds of things and I just wasn't hireable and I think this was a clincher here, a BA in theater performance. So kids out there, don't get a theater to performance degree. I know you really want to do it, but don't become a nurse.
What Mel is trying to say is the stems are very important.
No, we need performance. So get it as a minor. Major in something that will look a little bit better on a resume. You'll thank me in the future. I promise. And still some of you are going to go out and get your degree in theater performance and you'll be okay. But you'll think about this 10 years from now. So
you're
anyway.
like really breaking it. So let's go back to that now. Like, so you get your BA in that. What were you thinking you were going to do with that degree? Like, what was the plan? Like hitting Broadway? Like, what were you?
I actually wanted to get my MA in theater and then teach it.
Okay.
And all roads kind of lead back to teaching because it's what I'm doing in my job right now. And I absolutely love what I'm doing. So I worked for OSU for a time.
Are we going to talk about that now?
Yes, let's talk about it.
So that was one of the fun. So you and I have met before. So you're not brand new to coming down here. So it is kind of meeting new people when you come down here. So it was interesting. One of the board members for people on here, he came in and he immediately knew who Mel was. Like, it was like he saw a friend, like somebody he knew. Yes. It was like very comforting. I was like, I initially, if I'm being honest, I was like, oh, he knows Mel.
Yes, he did.
Right. Obviously, like he knows her. And I'm like, so then I'm like, I know your bio. And I'm like, I know that he's a doctor. So I'm like, he obviously knows her from OSU. And I'm like, and the way you reacted, I was like, she obviously knows him.
I thought he was from my church though.
So then it's probably like 15 minutes later. Mel comes over and she's like, "Oh, Dr. Dan." I had no idea who it was. Like it
Dr.
didn't click.
Bachman,
Yeah,
not
I'm
Dr.
sorry.
Dan.
It's very formal. We learned how important he is, but but it's not so important that you don't remember him. But it was just
No,
you played it so
friendly.
well of like you knew him, but you were
I
like,
did.
but you were just
did.
it was the complete wrong place.
It
but
was.
it's okay.
I even told him in our conversation, "Oh, I'm not going to our church anymore," and he was like, "Oh, okay." And then I started second guessing myself at that point. And what you have to understand is that Dr. Bachman is very important, the head, the top doctor. And he was wearing a baseball cap and a sweatshirt and jeans. And I had never, ever seen him that way. And he was smiling. So he was usually very serious at work.
That's not the
Very
Dr.
nice.
Bachman we know.
No,
we
no.
know him as
He smiled. He was always very nice, but when you're the doctor that calls the shots at the hospital, and I'm not just talking about one little part of the hospital, the entire hospital. When people said Dr. Bachman is walking through, you locked it up.
You're not helping him. You're not helping us keep him down. I mean, he's a former Navy guy, naval. Come on, he doesn't need to hear this.
You zipped it up, you know. But he was always very friendly, but also very busy and extremely serious. So he comes in with a smile, baseball cap, a sweatshirt, and I'm like, this must be the guy from my church. And he was very kind about it.
I want to know what he thought when you were like, "I'm not going to church anymore." He's like, "What is she talking about?"
Because I thought he was like, "Hey, how are you doing?" And I thought what he meant by that, this is churchese, by why haven't you been to church lately? Why haven't I seen you? Oh. And so, I was like, "Oh yeah, I don't know if you knew this, but we left Grace." And he was like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, he said that he had a family member who went to Grace. So perhaps, I don't know, but I just want to talk about him for 1 second. He does not have to do any shifts in the ED. He doesn't have to do any shifts in the ED if he didn't want to. Any shifts in the hospital if he didn't want to. And he voluntarily does shifts in the ED.
Yeah,
he's a good guy.
You can't find it, but Dan, what we'll call him. Are we calling him Dr. Bachman? Is that what we're calling him?
We
Dr.
can call
Bachman.
him Dan. Now I don't work for
Dan
him.
Dan was guest number 1. Somehow his episode went missing. Like, it wasn't intentional. As much as we the Army Navy thing that we haven't like to play, he was actually guest number 1. He's actually, he's on our board with Pours of Patriots. But yeah, like if you don't know, like Dan Bachman is doing like unbelievable shit. Like not only running at the hospital, he's part of a FEMA team.
I did not know
one of the
that.
top tier FEMA teams in Ohio. He volunteers for that. I mean, he's a doc. I mean, he'll probably you can text me with all your stuff that I'm missing, Dan, if you want. But he's also one of the doctors for oh my God, that was the honor flights. He does that, and now he's doing something which I'm completely against. Is he's flying around in helicopters doing something that I was like, do not get in the helicopters. Not a good thing. But yeah, he is the dude that's always, He's definitely leads the way. He's like to me. If you look at like a leader, he definitely is. But obviously, doesn't go to the same church as you. But other than that, it's good.
One time I had to call him, and I was like, "Hello, Dr. Bachman," and he's like, "Hey, how are you? Let's fix this problem." And I was like, "Okay, he's cool. He's cool."
But all you people that listen to OSU, you better fear Dr. Bachman when he comes around there. You better watch out.
Go to OSU East Hospital. We really are the best. We're a community hospital, and everybody tries to talk shit about us, but we're awesome. So I don't work there anymore, though.
Okay.
I work for Lost Community Services.
And remember, you can't fly without supply.
That's right.
That's another catchphrase you got in there. Don't forget that one. It's been a while since you threw that one down. Are you ready? Before we get into the last, are you ready for another pour? Let's do the last one. You already had a little bit, but we'll try it. We'll do it again. I did fail you. That you did say you're a big whiskey sour person. I'm a big whiskey sour person. Unfortunately, I didn't have the energy to make you some pre-made. People are shaking their heads.
I know they are.
And if I would have made the whiskey sour, I wasn't going to do the egg white.
They were advocating for me.
The problem with it is that the egg whites, some people like it, some people don't.
I don't think I would have liked that.
It's actually really good.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, but it's kind of wrapping your head around it.
Mm-hmm.
It's really good. So I did fail you on that. But
Okay.
you did mention that you like wild turkey. So we have
Okay.
plenty of wild turkey products down here. So we've talked about wild turkey in the past. Wild turkey is located in Lawrenceburg, Kentucky. The wild turkey brand is said to have risen after Austin Nichols executive took some warehouse samples on a hunting trip, a turkey hunting trip. The bourbon was so popular that he continued to bring it back, and people just say you need to, bring that wild bourbon, the wild turkey bourbon with him. So Austin Nichols began bottling wild turkey in 1942. It is the home to the man, the myth, the legend, Jimmy Russell. If you've never heard of him, you probably should if you're into whiskey.
Okay.
I always show this out even more. Is he's back at wild turkey most of the time. So if you are down in that area, if you're into whiskey, you want to see a legend, go see Jimmy. He's there signing. He'll sign anything. He'll sign babies on the top of their head. He'll sign bottles. He'll sign everything. But he's a great guy. He's still one of the most amazing people to talk to. I was fortunate to have a lot of conversation with him, and it's really cool. So if you're into whiskey, he's one of the last living legends that are still around.
Wow.
He's been there for now, I think, over I want to say 68, maybe 69. No, 70, right? 70 now. Is it officially 70? There's 70 years now he's been there. So a long time. The distillery and wild turkey brand were purchased by Pernod Ricard in 1980. And then in 2009, the Campari Group purchased them, the distillery and the brand. Wild turkey rare breed that we have here. This is actually not a release you can get in the States, but it was first released in 1991. Since they released it, there's been 11 batches. Some of those batches are released at the same batches are released at multiple times of the year. The batches used to be denoted by the batch number, but more recently it's denoted by the proof on the top ring. We'll pull it out. But this is wild turkey, rare breed Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey. It's not age stated. It's a blend of 6, 8, and 12-year-old bourbons. The proof is 116.8. The mash bill is 75% corn, 13% rye, and 12% malted barley. And you liked it before, so
I did.
Better than Wild Turkey 101, but
so I've already tried it.
You're not having some more?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
I'm gonna have one.
You have one.
I haven't tried it. I haven't had it till yet. It comes in a cool box or two.
They have everything here, by the way.
Don't tell them that.
Oh, I'm not allowed to?
We have nothing here, everybody. There's nothing here. We have everything here, but there's alarm systems, cameras.
Okay. Yes, it's very, very highly guarded.
You sure don't want to try some?
No, I'm good. I'm good.
These guys are going to want to try. So hand it to the.
Okay.
And this is actually a sample. You can see it before you give it to me. You can turn it up. This is from the UK. You can see the sticker on the back right above. Somebody smuggled it, and so let's go back to no one wants to hire a.
Nope. But OSU gave me a shot, and I did. I worked over at the James for a little while, for 6 months. And then I thought, I want to be a patient experience advocate, which actually we go bedside and we handle major problems in the hospital, which is how Dan and I met. Because I only called him, I think, twice, and it's for the most major issues in the hospital. And I love doing that work, but, it triggered my PTSD. That's where I found out and started getting flashbacks and everything. I was in suicide crisis, and I could not do any kind of healing in my home environment, because at the time I just felt like I had never, ever been comfortable in the home environment. And I just realized that last year. But I'd never been comfortable. That's why I was so angry. I just didn't know how to deal with mom, dad, kids, and showing love that, I didn't know if I had all that love. And so I went away for 12 days. I got, my husband was very gracious. I went to a safe place with one of my best friends who is older, in her 70s, and her husband, who's a counselor. And I was going through all the things, major disassociation. I got to a point where I couldn't, all of the trauma was coming out, and I couldn't drive. I couldn't think. It was a really very difficult time, necessary for that to happen, but very difficult. And then last year around Thanksgiving, I came home and I quit my job over at OSU. And that's when I found Lost Community Services, which is what I do now. So
the struggle you had, like what, like, when you've been, I can't thank you enough. And it's very humbling to sit across from you. And we've had short conversation before for you to share this with me and the audience. It makes my heart cry, but also makes my heart so sad that you feel safe and that you're in a place where you can share that now in your own life. So thank you again for sharing that. So like someone that's struggling, like what would be your advice to someone who was like you, that mom? You wrote it. I mean, I read it, so the I'm thankful for the blurry years. I think knowing now the conversation I have for more, there's a lot of stuff that's going on there. I can't wait to read it again after talking to you and knowing what we shared tonight. But what do you tell that, that mom who is struggling in that home environment, they're struggling being a mom, or they're struggling being a dad? Like what's your advice, after all those years where you struggle with it, what would you tell someone?
I would say if you're struggling that hard, you need to get help, and help looks different for everybody. I would start with a therapist or clergy and see where that goes. It's so important to admit that you can't do it all. And I wish that I had been able to admit that before, but my trauma was buried very, very deep in a box. And it took being in that job setting to kind of get it out. And then I would say, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to leave for a time. I think that was a huge fear of mine. Like I had failed in some kind of way. But sometimes you can't heal in that environment, because I was always mom, and not only mom, but caretaker to my son. There were so many demands. Now with that, you have to have somebody who's supportive. You have to have a partner who's going to support you. Or if you don't have a partner who supports you, a mom and dad, or a friend that can take over. But don't be afraid to leave if you need to leave for a time. You can always come back.
For record, yeah.
You can,
don't just take off and not come back.
I think I had been so critical. Any time I'd ever heard that a mom left her family and walked out the door and never came back, I was always like, no way. There is no way that I would ever do that, and that I would ever even think that would be a possibility. But I sit before you today and I have so much compassion for moms who walk out and don't leave, because you have to be in some sort of tremendous crisis to do that and not come back and walk away. There were many times when I felt like I wanted to leave my situation and never return. Now that wasn't healthy. I needed to heal. I did return, and it was hell. It was hell. I slept a lot and didn't go to work and fought with my husband, and my kids had no idea what was going on, and went through the hell of going through EMDR therapy, which is a different kind of nightmare. Which ended up helping me in my healing process. But get out there and get help and reach out. Yeah.
I think that you hit them all. I mean, the number one thing is it's a good opportunity to share. Like if you or someone is in crisis and might be considering suicide, or you need to talk, please contact the Veterans Crisis Hotline at 988 or at 1-800-273-8255 and press 1, or you can text 838-255 or chat online at Veterans Crisis line.net/chat. I mean, and if like Mel said, the key thing is how you feel. This is one of the things I learned, as I used to think my suffering or what was wrong with me, my shame was like unique, right? Like I was the only person feeling that way. Like the community that I'm in now, like it's so refreshing to know that like we're the same. Like I'm not special. Like it's like it's great to be able to look at another person and just be like, there's no shame in it. Like they know exactly how it's safe for me to say, like, yeah, I've wanted to literally like just not be a dad and not be like leave my family.
Right.
And have somebody like validate that is like, there's something, it's not empowering. It's more of like getting rid of that shame, because you start to feel like, what's wrong with me? Like,
right.
Like, cause the problem is what you don't know unless you talk to other people is that most of the people are feeling the same way that you're feeling.
That's
right.
True. I found so many people.
Yeah. It's the same. Like, for me, like, somebody, that's acting like a dickhead in line and cutting, like that guy's or gal's probably going through some stuff that, when you really look at them and have empathy for them and understanding, it's huge. So like talking about it is huge. And you said before, like I can't save anyone. I can't worry about everyone else all the time unless I'm good with myself. Like I can't be the best version to other people unless I'm okay. And there's a hard part about for me a long time is I used other things to do that. I numb with, I had my numbing things that I did to get away from that. But yeah, like I've heard people, I just talked to someone the other day about that's struggling with some stuff and definitely needs to get help. And he said, my work is too important for me to disappear for 72 hours or for 12 days, whatever. And what I tell you in that is like, I felt the same way in September of 2023 when I left away for Save a Warrior. I'm like, when I got my phone back, I expected my phone to be blown up and the world to have ended without me. And guess what?
It's very humbling, isn't it?
Yeah. It was like, holy shit. The important people knew where I was at.
Right.
My phone, the life went on. The world, the world didn't implode.
Right.
And I came back at a better, in a better space helping. So yeah, there's definitely nothing selfish about getting the help you need. And you said before, not everybody has a spouse. Not everybody has family. Not everybody has friends. But dude, I'm telling you, if you ask people, you're going to have someone that's going to help you. They're going to do what they have to help you. There's people out there. There's men and women that will help. They're people that will help your husband or wife take the kids to school. They will watch the kids. If you're going there to take care of yourself, you just have to be open and
exactly
and honest about it. So
yeah,
that's so crazy to these these conversations that like they always take such a different turn sometimes. Yeah. This is one where it's just crazy to hear like so many things that, the term we use a lot, like just talking to you, like in my community is like me too, right? There's the whole time in my mind, there's like so many me too's when I don't want to keep saying that because then I sound like I'm crazy over here, but out loud, but like there's so many things that I've seen just, and that's the big thing I'm trying to say is like the whole thing of what you think you're doing or what the worst thing that's happened to you, it's happened to other people.
Right.
Like there's no shame in it. Like they didn't, the other people didn't do the right thing. Other people didn't do we're all flawed human beings. And when we can address that, we can be honest about and be vulnerable. I mean, my life changed when that happened. Like I don't live with shame anymore. Right. I don't live with that. The regret and it comes from, like you said before earlier in the podcast, like it's funny just to hear words like there's a lot of work that goes into it. It's not like you can I don't believe that you can give me 10 pills that are gonna make me feel better to do that. It takes a lot of work to be able to continue to work and understand what's triggering it and I have good days, I have bad days, but I'm just thankful that I have a lot of safe men in my life that have helped me get to where I'm at. And they're not only safe men from Save a Warrior. I think it's important to say that, but there's like a few of them here in the basement that are with me that are safe men that I know that I can, when I have a problem, we're not alone. That's the biggest thing about what's going on. We're really not alone. There's someone knows exactly what you're going through. There's someone that wants to help. You just got to have the courage to ask for it.
Yep. So. Exactly. I have a couple good friends, but that my transition out of OSU led me into Lost Community Services, which we support people who are bereaved by suicide. We're an installation of hope. And I actually became the suicide prevention coordinator, which is prevention in itself for me.
Yeah, no.
It's really weird.
No, it is. No, I mean, it is. I mean, it is, but it isn't. It
Right.
is if you don't really like, and I don't want to like preach or whatever, but
Right.
it is until it isn't. Like, so
Right.
the same thing with like, when I started doing these podcasts, it was crazy. Like, it was probably like 4 or 5. I was like, holy crap, there's something that's helping me feel
Right.
better about myself. There's something that's like, there's this common thing. It was like, holy cow. Like, it's like, these people are helping me, like, by them sharing, being vulnerable and telling their stories, it's helping me heal. And that's the same thing, like, with what we do in our community with Save the Warriors, like coming back from men, it's crazy to watch. Like, I can watch, I just watched a group of men, complete complete the long to this workbook this last week. And just watching these men transform in the past 7 weeks, it's saved my life. We tell them that, and it's one of these things I think they feel and love it, but like every night, like 2 nights a week, being on these calls with them and seeing them, it's like, it saves my life.
Yep.
It's like, I like, they don't understand, like, they will understand. I think they do understand. It's like, you come down and you're like, you see these men that like you knew were like you or are like you, and you just see like a smile on their face. You see them like address something, and you're like, holy shit, you just like,
yeah.
and I've had an awful day. Like, I gotta, like, that's what these guys don't understand is I'm having bad days. Like, these times I got on these calls that I'm spiraling, and like
Right.
to see these guys, like, just to see them coming back for themselves, to see them on a call and being vulnerable and doing the work. It's like, it is crazy that,
It is.
it's like I have it that, for me, it's like that, it's, the warrior class, saving the warrior class. Like, that's
Right.
something like the people like that are like me I have a lot of, it took a long time to understand that I needed people that understood me, that are similar to me to come back for me and to be
Right.
there for them, and to come back for them and continue. And it's just so refreshing. Like you're saving my, like, there's so many things in this conversation that like
Right.
I could talk about for hours, but I'm not to. I'm just like taking it like for myself. I'm just
Right.
like, this is what, why I didn't know it, but this is why I started the podcast
Right.
a couple of years ago. It's so crazy.
Exactly.
So
I've been able to help talk to people through my job who are in suicide crisis, and then encourage others to talk to other people who are in suicide crisis directly through what I do and the training that I do, help save lives. And then because we work in postvention with people who are bereaved, people who have lost someone to suicide are at higher risk to die by suicide themselves. And so that's why we call it postvention work. We do support groups and intervene on scene.
Yeah.
On scene.
Yeah, you guys are doing amazing stuff. I mean, like, we met the Lost Community Service a couple of years ago. Oh, sorry. From, one of our favorite charities that we always will support. The ladies that, Mind the Men, Spike the Stigma.
Yeah.
That's where we met them. And it was kind of when we the podcast had just started off, and we were starting to talk about becoming a 501c3 and how we were going to help out. And like, what we figured out is like, we wanted to be on that back end. We're like, we're maybe a couple of years behind you guys.
Yeah.
Like, I have the most amount of respect for what your organization does. And I don't think a lot of people know that, like, for what she kind of hit it is, but like Lost actually has volunteers that will show up like right after, like minutes after or like hours after a family member has committed suicide, and they're there to give support. That is unbelievable. And I have so much respect for everybody in the organization, because I know I can't do that. But it was interesting how we started to form what we did. Is we're a few years behind you when somebody needs some help with schooling, not theater. We will never give a scholarship to anybody that's having theater, Josh. No, I'm kidding. Theater major.
I'm sorry, I ruined it for you guys. And my daughter wants to major in art. I'm like, no.
No, but So it is like what it is amazing, like what this organization does. It's not just it's literally from minutes on to like, the same way with us, like years down the road.
Yes, holistic care.
Yeah, and it's crazy. So and it was started from, I think your founder is Denise, right?
Yep.
Who lost her son Drew to suicide 2012, and she found the support of a fellow suicide loss survivor invaluable. Loss began supporting loss survivors and first responders in 2014. When activated by the coroner's office, trained volunteers immediately provide services, understanding, and support to newly bereaved. At least one lost volunteer is a survivor of suicide loss, and the newly bereaved are often connected strong with them. To the newly bereaved, witnessing fellow loss survivor functioning at this level can be inspiring. Thus, the seeds of hope are planted. Today, Loss offers support groups, remembrance events, companioning, suicide prevention or postvention, and prevention education and training to other communities, and interested in developing or enhancing their suicide postvention and prevention efforts. So
and we have a strong team, a strong leader in Angela behind us, and then Jojo, who does postvention, Izzy, who does that important work with the volunteers. We've got Brandy doing all of the events, and we've got Alex doing all of the important graphic design work that is, integral to everything that we design that you see up here is Alex. And so as a team, and then of course with all of our wonderful volunteers, most of who are loss survivors as well. So they're volunteering for this organization while going through their own pain, their own trauma. It's an incredible mix of people. So if anybody's interested, please, we'd love to have anybody volunteer for us. But nonprofit organization is such important work.
Yeah,
What's the best way to get a hold of you to volunteer?
To volunteer, you can go to losscs.org. That's losscs.org.
It's up there, we should have had the camera because she rocked that. She didn't know that we were blocked right now. She did a good point. It was good.
Oh, you didn't have it.
Oh,
so go to losscs.org and click on volunteer. Anybody can volunteer. You do not have to be a loss survivor. We're looking for survivors, but we're also looking for people who simply want to help us out, who aren't survivors. We need a good mix of both. And so Izzy would be happy to plug you in or come out to one of our events. So
a question on that. You've talked about your personal struggles with PTSD and your SI. So for you, not, and we're talking the workouts, but just talk about anything in general. But what, with all the attention and focus that is on suicide right now, and a lot of it is the veterans community, the warrior community, because we're winning this race, which we shouldn't be. What is not being done that you think should be done?
Oh, that is such a good question. I think there's a lot of research out there about the access that veterans have to lethal means. And I don't think we're doing a good enough job addressing that. I have a training that I do, getting people to and convincing our veterans how important this is, safe gun storage, being able to have that gun in a safe, and then also have your safety plan in with the firearm, or have your family's picture on the safe, is so important. Making sure that people know that keeping your gun underneath your pillow is not safe. Having easy access to it is not safe. I have a lot of empathy for people who have gone through PTSD that feel like they need that. But for the safety of not only you, but for your entire family, put that gun away, lock it up.
This is so weird because this topic was addressed on with Dr. Craig Bryant, who was on a few episodes ago. Yeah, he's one of the things to talk about, like breaking the thing, and like when he came on in the book I'm reading and talking about that. That's the number one thing. And then like when I was actually doing the research and getting ready for this podcast, out of the blue, because it's mainly when I'm researching the veteran that we honor that took their life, things come up, and there was actually a clip that came up when he was like looking at it was talking about in 2019 and the state of Ohio. Don't correct me. I have it bookmarked, but I didn't have time to put it on there. This is why it's weird about having these conversations. But it was like in the state of Ohio, like 75% of the veteran suicide, it was like 79%, I think, veteran suicide rate took place with firearms.
Right.
Whereas the normal community was down to like maybe high 40s or high 50s. So it's a very unpopular thing. I'm getting on board with it too, is like, because people don't want to, I own guns. I like guns. But yeah, they need to be locked away. And if you're in crisis, like you need to understand that they don't need to be in your house. Like that's the thing that like you really, it's this whole thing, and it's an unpopular thing with people start telling stories or rackets about why they have to have it. But we are literally, the veteran population is using firearms.
70% are dying by 70% are dying by suicide, by firearms in our veteran population.
Yeah.
Other populations, it's 50 or 55%, which is still high. But then whenever I train in Convo Calm, which is conversations on access to lethal means, how to have a conversation with someone who has access and who is in suicide crisis. Whenever I do this training and tell them it's 70% or more of our veteran population is dying by suicide by firearm, they gasp. They can't believe it. And I'm like, believe it, because it's true. And the work that Dr. Craig Bryant is doing is so important. I don't know if he's a doctor. Is he a doctor?
Yeah, he's a,
okay. Is so important. I've read everything that he's done. And when his research says veterans are dying by suicide simply because they have access to firearms within their home, that's very serious. And I care about that. Yeah. And the other thing that I would say is, if you are a member of, I'm participating in a research study about the stigma of suicide in religious communities with Dr. Karen Mason over at Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary. If you are a clergy member or a pastor, you need to get suicide prevention training into your churches. It is so important. People do not realize that 1.2 million people attempt suicide annually. We don't even know about. We don't even know that they're attempting. And and then if we think about all the people that are just attempting suicide, how many more are thinking about it? We need to, first of all, wipe the stigma away from our religious communities about all things related to suicide. And then we need to train the people in our congregations and our clergy and the staff members on how to talk to someone in mental health crisis. Very passionate about that. I try to get in as many churches as I can. As you can imagine, it's hard to get into churches and talk about this topic.
Yeah, it's hard topic to talk to anybody about. I mean, when you start talking about, taking guns away from, when Craig was on, we started talking about like the stuff, I'm almost done with one of his books, and you start reading it and you're like, holy crap. It's like, it's right there in front of people. And they're still like if you talk to a veteran, they'll be like, you can't take my guns. And then like, if I, then it starts getting into these stories. Like, if I take it away, I'll never get them back. But I'm like, man, you're right. Like there's no reason to be sleeping. Like, I firmly believe there's no reason for you to be, I have it that there's no reason for you to be sleeping with a gun under your pillow. Like there's some things there's some stuff that's going on that, it could be the environment you're at, but like it could be something. Most likely, it's something to tie into that, like deep down inside, that you need to address and get rid of it. But like that access is huge, and it's just one of my most unpopular things I've started saying is like, I feel like anybody that has documented PTS and is getting money from the federal government should not be able to own a gun. And that's a veteran, and as veteran community, and they'll freak the fuck out. Like people, like they'll hear that, like, but it's honest to God through when you have 70% of us are killing ourselves with it. Like there's something tied into it. It's something that's definitely there, and it's like really look at that. I mean, if you're living with a veteran that has that, and there's a safe in the house, put the gun in the safe. Don't like do what you can to help, but it's mainly the veteran's responsibility to be like, listen, man, I don't need this, I used to tell stories about how I felt like I needed guns all over the house. It's like, that's such, it's bullshit. It's a story. And, I have never said this before. I'm going to say it tonight. I did not have guns in the house because my wife did not want them in the house because my kids were younger. Had I had a gun in my house, probably before, I probably would have killed myself.
Mm-hmm. I understand that.
I just know that. That's enough to say. I just know that is so. There's like, for many years I complained about it. Had I had access to a gun, and sometimes I absolutely would not be here today. So that's an important thing that people understand. Is the statistics don't lie, and that's like, I couldn't be happier that you feel that same way about it.
I think I'm pretty sure had I had access or known how to get access in the times when I was in suicide crisis, it might be a different story for me as well. And that's access to both firearms and pills. You don't need all those pills in your house, get rid of those too, lock those up as well. So
my dad definitely doesn't need antibiotics. He actually does now.
Yeah.
I think he's on that to get out of some other stuff, but yeah, I mean, that's an important thing. Like, yeah, if you don't know who Dr. Brian is, like,
look him up.
When he came on, like, the only thing I regret is I didn't read his book before. He is like, the shit he is throwing is unbelievable. And the community, he is turning the whole suicide prevention thing upside down. And I hope a lot of other people need to get on board with him. So that is awesome. So did we miss anything?
No, I think that's good. I think we cover. I wasn't expecting to cover my whole entire life, but it's been kind of fun.
It's been fun, but it's also been, in all reality, it's been completely humbling. I can't tell you.
It's been a blessing.
Like I said before, thank you for having the courage, and also for sharing with me and sharing with the audience, what you went through in your life. It's inspiring. It's inspiring me. And that's no bullshit. It's really some of the things you said in your life are a lot of me too's, and it's awesome to see you doing so well. Look forward to seeing you at all the other events that are out there.
Thank you.
I have been slacking on doing our stuff with your boss at Loss Prevention. Tell her I will respond to her email. I'm sorry.
Okay, Angela, you heard that.
But we'll fall into it. But tonight, I guess we'll run into the part of the night that I hate the most. But tonight we're going to honor a veteran who unfortunately didn't get the help they needed before and took their life. So tonight we honor U.S. Marine Sergeant Deanna Lynn Martorella, 28 years old. Deanna was born September 18th, 1987 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Deanna took her life on March 4th, 2016 at her home in Sneads Ferry, North Carolina. She graduated from Sherrill High School in 2006. After graduating from high school, Deanna enlisted in the United States Marine Corps and was assigned to Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. During her service in the United States Marine Corps, Deanna deployed to Afghanistan in support of Operation Enduring Freedom and was assigned to a female engagement team in the Helmand province. In her early years, Deanna was happiest when she was playing soccer. After leaving the Marine Corps in 2015, Deanna continued her love of physical fitness and spent many hours training in the gym, as well as helping others by becoming a personal trainer. Deanna loved her Yorkie dogs, especially Charlie, who lived with her in North Carolina. Deanna is survived by her parents, Pete and Laurel, sisters Robin, Jody, and Jill, brother Pete, nieces and nephews Derek, Kylie, Jewel, Zoe, Asher, Jacob, and Jordan, and numerous other relatives and friends. And please, if you or someone you know is considering suicide, contact the Veterans Crisis Hotline at 988 or 1-800-273-8255 and press 1, or text 838-255, or you can chat online now at veteranscrisisline.net/chat.
Yeah. We remember you today, Deanna. We remember you.
We do. And that's actually still the hardest part of getting ready for every podcast is it's not really hard to find them now, because that's another thing, is a lot of veterans families still have some shame in what happened with their service member, but then also you start to dive in and and look at their family, and I just start to look, and you start to feel like you just wish like that they got the help they needed before, you know what I mean? And then just feel the pain that it involves. So again, I want to thank you for coming on. It's been a great episode 66.
Yes. Thank you for having me. Thank you for everything you're doing for veteran community.
I appreciate it. Thank you for everything you're doing, and thank you for everything you've done in the past. I mean, your service, not only in the Air Force, but also to the people around the world is inspiring. Thank you. Thank you. And we'll end it with a quote like we always do. So we'll end this quote, end the episode 66 with a quote from Robert Shannon. It says, "Never pity missionaries, envy them. They are where the real action is, where life and death, sin and grace, heaven and hell converge." Oh, that's very meaningful. Thank you so much for, again, a little teary. Appreciate that. Well, we will see everyone in a couple weeks. Actually, we have some announcements. Josh just getting through. So I don't know how I missed it, but if you haven't noticed, Army Navy's coming up, and you know, if you don't know, Army's actually playing for a conference championship, unlike the Ohio State on Saturday. We're going to roll through Tulane, work our way into, they're all shaking their head over there. We're going to work our way to the big Army-Navy game, December 14th. Again, get your tickets. This is a great charity event. There's a lot of great organizations that are going to be there. The FOP throws one heck of a game. It'll be great as long as Army wins, which I'm predicting they will. It'll launch them into, we got to break the top 20 before the end of the year. That's my prediction. I'm not your girl to talk about football. Yeah, we beat Air Force. Nobody cares about Air Force football. It's okay. It's all right. But please, if you haven't got tickets are still available. There's going to be some great packages. And like I said, it's a great event that they throw every year, and we're glad to be part of it. So we are closing up the end of the year. I think Mel is the second to last person for the podcast. We have Bobby coming on, who's met him at one of the events that I met you at. So we'll close it out. Okay, great. We're looking for April. There's some people. Please contact us if you're doing it. Again, I want to thank you for coming on. Episode 66 has been unbelievable. And one of my, actually, I'm going to say this, one of my favorite episodes. Oh, thank you. Just in the conversations had. And I think you should get Dan back on so he can redeem his lost episode. Yeah, I mean, his episode was kind of weak. No, it's funny you bring that up because I have never listened to more than maybe like 4 minutes of any episode. I can't do it. I can't. Yeah, I definitely can't watch it. I can't. But the early episodes are kind of interesting because it was like when you're trying to learn what you're doing, and we might have to bring Dr. Bachman back on and hear about all the great things he's doing. No, no, I do want to tell you, thank you again. Thank you for everything you do. And thank you for coming and sharing your story with us. And we will see everyone in a couple weeks. Go Army, beat Navy. Go Air Force. Can't fly without supply. God, you ruined it. Sorry. We'll see everyone in a couple weeks. All right, bye.